social media, all of this stuff has an impact on our mental health. And we work in the nitty gritty of it. So we're really putting our minds at high risk because we're constantly making ourselves vulnerable in a way. The great thing when you're a content creator is you get to choose what you're comfortable with. So if there are parts of your life that you don't want to open up, you don't have to open those up. That's up to you. But you kind of have to accept that, like, once you become a person that, a million people are watching or whatever, there's going to be people that are just going to dig up stuff in your life and want to do that. And you kind of just have to, I think, trust that, like, who you are and you're good. But I think it can be so scary for people that don't really know that that's going to be a part of it, or aren't as secure in who they are.
Yeah.
Because then it's like looking into a mirror where people are telling you who you are, and because you're not sure, that's going to inform your opinion of yourself.
Today's guest is the host of one of the most popular comic book YouTube channels in Canada, Top 10 Nerd. She's also an actress, a cosplay model, a board game aficionado, a streamer, part-time mermaid, full-time gremlin, and bringer of the best vibes. Today we're talking with Amanda McKnight. And speaking of vibes, I think you guys are going to love this episode. This was such a fun talk. We start talking about what she does, and then we go down a really deep and spacey rabbit hole. I had so much joy being in this conversation, and I hope it translates to you and your ear holes today. Also, let you know you can follow Amanda McKnight and keep up with all the amazing things she does on Twitter at VampX13, and also on Instagram under the same tag. That's Vamp, VAMP X13. But that's all I gotta say for an intro. Let's get right into this. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. I'm actually at my friend's place in Waterloo. I can show you actually the spot that I'm at. There's like a really nice pool out here. I don't know if you can see that.
Beautiful.
So yeah, we've just been my friend Daryl, who I know he's a board game designer, and so I'm at his and his wife's place, and yeah, it's been a crazy weekend, man. We did some shrooms the other day.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I also just found out, like, I'm on hold for like a commercial, so I'm just waiting. I have wardrobe today, so it's really weird because I'm also like on hold, but I also have wardrobe. So I'm like, that feels very not on hold and very confirmed, but I guess I'll still wait and see what's going on.
Yeah, and you're kind of like half on vacation, half working right now. It's
like
it doesn't stop.
Yeah, basically. Not really.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time right now.
No worries. I was like, yo, we could totally do this. And I'm just basically on the Wi-Fi here, and I already had my laptop with me because yesterday I had to do a stream on my OnlyFans. And so I said I wanted to come hang out, but I was like, I have some work to do this weekend. Mm-hmm. And everyone was just like it's only Daryl, his wife Tanya, and my friend Tyla, but they were like, yo, just like bring your stuff and like you can work. And I was like, okay, cool. So I just like came up here and did a stream from the guest room, and yeah, it's been fun. So.
Yeah, that's perfect. Like, do a little work, jump in the pool, come back to your thing. No, that's fucking awesome. The hustle doesn't stop. And
the hustle never stops.
Yeah. Even like when I think of you, you're like a person who has turned all their passions into a profession, which I think is so cool. And I kind of I kind of want to go back in time with you too. Like when you were little, were you like always like reading comics and like being into games and stuff like that?
So I was definitely into games. Like growing up, we had an original Nintendo, like a SNES, and then I had a Sega Genesis. And I remember when Xbox first became like a thing. Like I was like, oh my gosh, I need an Xbox. So I've always been like an Xbox girl since day one. And I was always like the little like basement gremlin. So I was always like downstairs playing games on the computer or like playing the Xbox. My parents would be like, why doesn't our daughter, like, she needs to go outside? And I would make movies too. That was another thing as a kid.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. But and then I didn't really read comics, but I read a lot of books when I was a kid.
Okay, cool.
So I've always been a big reader.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I totally relate to being the basement gremlin too. It's just like I remember one day my mom came down and I'm like playing one of like the first MMOs ever. And it was just like I was just up all night. I didn't even realize I was up all night. The sun's coming out. My mom's about
What
to go.
MMO were you playing?
It was called City of Heroes. And it was kind of like
Oh, okay,
World
cool.
of Warcraft with superheroes. But
Hmm.
this is like the week I quit
Oh,
the
I feel like
game.
I've heard you talk about that before on the show. That actually sounds like such a cool game. I was
Yeah,
like, I need to play this. This sounds
it
like such a cool MMO.
it was so good it became a problem. And that day I realized I had a problem because the sun came up and my mom's going to work and she's like, "Were you just playing this all night?" And then I look at the time and I lied. I was like, "Oh no, I just got up early," and like, and then I just had like
Yeah,
this.
I like just woke up.
Yeah, I had a revelation. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, I'm just living in this fucking game, and I canceled my subscription and everything. But yeah, it's kind of cool to
Yeah,
hear
it's
your
hard
background.
with MMOs. They consume your life. So, my ex played like a ton of World of Warcraft. So I would hang out all the time with him and he'd be playing World of Warcraft. And like that was so much of like what he did. And I actually loved it. I loved watching it. I think World of Warcraft is so cool. And I played World of Warcraft for a bit, but I like was getting too sucked in. So I stopped playing because
Yeah,
that is MMOs and that's how it goes.
yeah, it's dangerous.
It
It's
like
like,
takes over your own life. Yeah.
yeah, and you get like this weird dopamine from it too, and it's like, yeah, and like you mentioned, it takes over your own life. I was listening to like another podcast. It was actually like a friend of Joe Rogan's, Brian Redban or whatever, and he was talking about playing City of
Mhm.
Heroes too. And he was like, I would go outside in the day and I'd imagine myself jumping on all the buildings in like real life. Like your brain just starts switching to like the game mode. Like it's so fucked up. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
so messed up. But it's also kind of like, I mean, I don't know. It is really creatively freeing. The thing for me is like I'd be up late. I used to do a lot of what's it called? Did you ever go on like RPG boards
No, I
and
didn't get that deep
like
with
do
it.
like role playing online?
No, no. Was that
Okay, yeah,
something you used to
that was
do?
a lot of what I would do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I would go onto the like RPG like forum boards and I would like role play in little like stories, like little like fan fiction role plays where we'd like all be vampires and be living in this world. Or like there was like a Harry Potter forum board I remember I was a part of, and it was like each board you would have a character and then you would go in and like when it was your turn to like add to the story. So it was kind of like I don't know, it's almost like improv really. But
Yeah.
now I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that was my life when I was a kid.
That's cool. And like I'm sure like in some ways it's a beautiful escape too, you know, like there's stresses in the world with work and just like
Oh,
it's
yeah.
nice to just like I guess have that group of people you can go to. And I know like a bunch of people who play Dungeons and Dragons and they just have
Oh,
like
yeah.
this like weekly meetup and it's just like, okay, for the next few hours I'm just this fucking wizard rabbit character, and you just like they've been on like an adventure for like a year and stuff. It's interesting.
TTRPGs are such a great like
Yeah.
escape from reality. And I used to play, I mean, I still do play, but I started playing like D&D when I was like 17 and have been playing like RPGs ever since. And it's so what's really cool though is I love that like you can have this escape, but then you can also have this like delve deeper into yourself at the same time. Because
Mm.
when you're playing these other characters, you're kind of like exploring different elements of you. So it's really fascinating. And I don't know if you know about like all the other like indie RPGs, but there's this one that I played a little while ago that I'm like obsessed with. It's called Bluebeards Bride.
Oh,
Have you heard of
interesting.
that one?
No, I haven't heard of it. I'm not really like
So I
into
think
the
it's
scene, but I'm interested in hearing about it.
oh yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
by like Magpie Games, and it is a TTRPG that's about like this lore of Bluebeard's Bride, like that story. Which, if you don't know the story, is all about a wife who marries a guy that she like doesn't know. Like the idea is like it's back in the day, you know.
Yeah.
And he's had many wives before, and they've all like kind of mysteriously like disappeared.
Mm.
And so she goes to this house, and after she's married, his house, and he has to leave on like a trip, and he gives her like a bunch of keys, and he's like, you can go to like anywhere you want in the house except for like this one room. You can't go in this one room. And so the whole story is, you know, she goes in all the other rooms, she has fun, and then eventually it just eats away at her, like, what's in the room? So she goes in and she finds all the dead bodies of his wives.
Oh
And
shit.
then yeah, and then he usually gets back just in time as this happens, catches her in the room and kills her. So that's the sort of like dark, I don't even know if you call it a fairy tale, kind of a fairy tale of what happens in the story. And in the RPG, you play as the bride, but you as a group play as her. So you're all different parts of her psyche that take control of her.
Oh
And
shit.
you all represent like different personas. There's like the mother, there's like what's she called? It's like the seductress, like there is the witch, and there's the like sort of like the child, like the innocent, the virgin, that's what she's called, the virgin. And you play as all these different parts exploring the room, and in each of the rooms there's a new horror, and you have to like experience that, and then it can affect your sanity. And then in the end you decide, as you gather evidence, on whether or not your husband is a good person or a bad person. Like, do you want to go in that final room? And
Wow.
either way it usually ends like terribly for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's like so intense. And then like you finish and you're like, I just feel like I explored so many things on like feminist issues, like gender. So many crazy things come up in it, and it's so scary too. Like, I love horror RPGs where you get to just be like, everything is awful.
Yeah, that's cool. And I
It's great.
never
There's
really.
another one called Call of Cthulhu that's like that.
Oh, right on, right on. Yeah, it's all like Lovecraftian
Mhm.
shit and stuff. That's pretty cool. I never
It's
thought
like,
of,
you
yeah.
know, at the end. Oh, I was just gonna say, it's like, you
Yeah.
know, at the end, the horrible thing that's about to happen. So it's like, this is the story, this is the ending of the story, basically. Like, you know, you're doomed. And then what you're telling is the story of how you became doomed.
Yeah.
But you
I
know it's gonna end
yeah.
terribly.
I thought it was interesting. Just something I never thought of, like of how you can play these games and just learn about yourself, like because you're basically like
Mm.
getting put in positions where you wouldn't be in real life, and you're like, oh, how would I deal with like this horrible thing? And like, it's almost like that simulation and putting your brain into that mode in a way, in a safe environment, which is really cool.
Yeah, it is. It's a really cool way to, I think, explore some of the things that we naturally don't want to, some of the places we naturally don't want to go in our minds. But it's like, because it's safe, you're like, oh, I can go to these places. And then through that, you find out more about like yourself, your perception of the world. You know, you find out more about your friends when you're playing these games as well, and like the things that you all kind of can connect through. And yeah, I think RPGs are just, it's so much fun. Man, I'm missing it now. I haven't played an RPG in a while, and I'm like,
Yeah, that's
been a
that
few
that
months.
sounds awesome. I always get like I mentioned too, like I get scared to jump into those type of games too, because I have like just a personality where I'm just all in when I find something that I like. And yeah, it
I
might be
love
another,
that.
it might be like another City of Heroes situation. But yeah, right now I just like
You become too
obsessing about,
obsessed.
yeah, right now I like obsessing about the podcast because it gives me excuses to just have one-on-one conversations with amazing people like yourself, Amanda. Like, this is cool. Like,
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that that is, I mean, I think that's the fun of like finding something that you love, though, and really like being like, I'm going to just do this all the time because I love it so much. That's how you turn something into a profession as well, right? Like, the more you do
Mhm.
it, the more it becomes your job, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And mainly you're known for like comic book stuff as well. Like right now
Yeah.
you're on Top 10 Nerd, a million subscribers
Mhm.
on YouTube. You're the face of that channel. And yeah, kind of speaking of turning something that you obsess of into a profession, like when did the comic books come into your life?
Yeah, so I've always really loved superheroes. I think for me, it actually started with cartoons. So I used to stay up really late when I was a kid watching, this is going to sound so ridiculous, but watching the old Spider-Man cartoon from like the 60s.
I did the same too. Like
Um,
it was on late at night at
yeah.
like Teletoon, right? Or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they'd always have like the old cartoons if you stayed up late. Because I guess the idea, I also love that so many of the things in my life that I enjoyed as a child were definitely things that were like kind of for adults, but I
Mm,
was like a kid, like I like this.
yeah.
So I'd stay up to like 10 or whatever and watch old Spider-Man cartoons. And then the X-Men cartoon, obviously in the 90s, I loved.
That's
So
my
it all kind
favorite
of
cartoon of all
started,
time. Yeah.
it's so good and it's so funny. I listen to so many podcasts now where they interview like people that work in comics and like work for, there's a Women of Marvel podcast that's really great that I listen to. And so many of the women that they have on there like got into it through the X-Men cartoon. So it's really awesome just how many people it brought in, but I think especially like how many women it brought in like randomly. I don't know if that's, I think it
Yeah.
brought everyone in, but especially women. That's where they started.
I
So,
think like it was one of the
yeah,
few cartoons at the time where there was like a lot of like strong women leads, like who kind of steal the show. And
yeah.
I actually like revisited it a few years ago, that cartoon. But when I was a kid, I always
How
like
was that?
it was amazing. But when I was a kid, I always
Yeah,
loved like Wolverine and Nightcrawler. But now I think Rogue is my favorite. Like I'm like so many
Rogue
of her
is so
like
good.
little like one liners and just like her personality. I'm just like, yo, like I was sleeping on Rogue for like fucking 20 years plus, maybe like fucking 30 years now. Like it's getting up there early
Yeah.
90s shit. But yeah, but like you mentioned too, that's interesting that you said that it brought like a lot of women into that, because yeah, definitely there's a lot of like just very strong female leads on that, and there wasn't too many
Mhm.
shows like that back in the day.
No, and I think X-Men brings a lot of people in general. Like I've always been a really big X-Men fan, and I think a lot of that is about like the X-Men are kind of outsiders, right? Like they're kind of these
Mhm.
people that, don't really belong, but they're like trying to like fight for their rights. And I feel a lot of people that are part of the nerd community kind of have always felt like I'm a weirdo, like I don't, like I'm different. Like for me, it was, and I'm very social, so it's very interesting because as a person, I'm very much a social butterfly. I'm
Mhm.
very charismatic, and I love meeting people. But then I also have this like introverted side of myself that like I just love to like disappear into a book. So I would go to parties with my family, and my mom would be like, "Oh, my daughter is so like charismatic, and she'll like hang out with everyone." And then I would be like curled up in the basement with like a book that I brought, and because I wanted to like finish a chapter. And my mom would be like, "You have to go out. There's like a trampoline. Like, what are you doing in here?" But so there's always been that weird, yeah, that weird dichotomy of my personality that I feel like has made me feel sometimes like, am I a weird person for liking all of these things? And so I think X-Men highlights a lot of those feelings in people, like, oh, you can be like a mutant, but you can still find a place in the world and you can still like find your family. And that's also what fandom provides for people, right? Like it's a way for us to all connect with each other and find our family. So yeah, I think that that's where it comes from. Definitely there's so many strong female leads, and Rogue and Jubilee were, I think, two of like my favorite characters from that show. I think Jubilee was like one of my first cartoon crushes as a kid.
Oh yeah,
So there's
that's
also that.
adorable.
Like I
Yeah.
definitely loved, yeah, I definitely was like, oh, Jubilee is like so cool and like such a hottie. Like I was just like so enamored by her, I
Yeah,
remember.
she was styling
With
too.
her
She
little
had
fireworks.
like the yellow jacket and the Bret Hart
Right?
sunglasses and stuff. Yeah.
Oh my God. And she still wears that yellow jacket today in comics. Like I love that the new X-Men stuff that they're doing right now. There's so much like callbacks to all of the history of it. So it's like acknowledging the history, but then still like giving you something new. And it's so good right now.
Oh, that's
I don't want
cool.
it to end. Jonathan Hickman is like the master of, like he's the head of X Desk right now. And I'm like, don't ever leave, Jonathan Hickman. It's so
Oh,
good.
so he's killing
But
it
yeah,
then. Fuck. Yeah, I kind of
always crushing it.
um I got out of like reading comics, not because I don't enjoy comics. It's just like I'm the type of person where I just
Mm.
have like way too many interests and there's just not enough time in the day. But one thing that's really
I feel
cool.
that.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of working under the same like YouTube umbrella with you. Like even though like I don't work on your videos, like some people don't even know like listening to this podcast, but like I'm a video editor and producer as well. And me and Amanda work in the same office, like producing for a number of different YouTube channels. But your channel specifically, it's kind of like keeping me in the loop of things, I feel like. And it's very like nice to like there's something comforting about top 10 nerd too, when you put on like your countdowns, whether it's like you or Taylor or whatever. It's just they're so well put together and just so much information, and like you can listen to it in like 8 minutes or whatever, and like
Yeah.
it's really cool. I kind of want to know how you segued into like that type of gig, like
Yeah, I don't even know. Let's go
it's
back
because
to that.
it's so
So
unique. Like it, and
also
it's
thank
something you
you.
do.
And Taylor
Yeah.
is amazing as well. Like so many people are like, Amanda, like I miss you. Where are you? And I'm like, I do a video a day, everyone. Like relax. Like I'm
Yeah,
here.
yeah. They freak
And
out like
and I'm
when
like,
Taylor's there.
yeah, yeah. And I'm like, Taylor's great. And also, geez, like this channel is so many people. And I don't think, I mean, we couldn't do this channel without everyone. Like it's one of those things too, where when you're the face of a channel, or like even just us as hosts, like people don't seem to sometimes realize that we have people like Sean, and we have, editors and producers behind the scenes that are also the masters of these channels, who are helping us to figure out what we're doing, who are helping us to edit the stuff and pull it all together. So yeah, it's a journey. But I got into it through like acting, I guess. So I've always been, when I was little, I actually wanted to be a singer or a marine biologist. Those were my two
Yeah,
random
I love
careers
how
that I
they're
was
like
like
so far away from each other too,
totally
but
different.
that's what makes you
Yeah.
special, Amanda. That's awesome. Why not be
Yeah, the
both,
two
you know?
sides.
Like,
Why not?
like singing about
I will
like
serenade the
whale
whales.
fossils and stuff.
Right.
Bring it
So
together.
I started with that as a kid, and then I've always loved performing. And so I remember I was going to go to like a regional art school, and I wanted to audition for the music program, but I also have been very nervous about my singing as a kid. I was kind of, I don't know, I kind of got hung up on it because I also kind of have a low voice. So, and a lot of the times when I would sing in classes, people would always want me to sing for some reason these soprano parts. And now my soprano sound is a lot stronger, but when I was younger, it was very like thin. And so I got nervous about music. And so I decided to audition for the drama program. From there, I went into acting, and I went to college for acting for film and TV. So I was working as an actor in Toronto with my agent and everything, doing film and TV and theater stuff.
Oh, cool.
And and I was serving, because that's what actors do, or bartending. That's what we do. And I remember I like saw an ad for this like online, like I don't know where it was, on casting workbook. No, not on casting workbook, but it was on like a casting site that I'm part of. And there was like a little thing being like, hey, we're looking for like YouTube hosts for this channel. It's like about nerdy stuff. It's like about like geek culture and like Harry Potter and like comic books and superheroes. And I was like, oh, I love superheroes. I love reading. I love so many nerd things. Like we don't even go into all of the things that I love, but like I'm a huge sci-fi nerd. I love Doctor Who. I love Star Trek. I love Star Wars. I think I actually have, I don't know if you can see this little guy, but this is a little Han Solo pin, but it's a little bear.
Oh, cute.
So yeah, like I love all of these different things. I love animated shows. So all of these geeky things I've always loved. And I was like, oh, I so want to do this channel. But I was nervous about my knowledge because I haven't been hardcore into comics like since I was a kid or anything like that. I love comic book stuff, but like I wasn't like, oh, I've read like 100 issues of this and 100 issues of that.
Yeah.
So I had to write a list, I think, for my audition that was on like Venom. And I did a bunch of research and I wrote my thing. And then I came in and did my audition, because that's what you do. And then we had like a little interview. And I remember in the interview being kind of nervous because I was like, oh, are they gonna like quiz me on all of this?
Did you
in
feel
this
like
issue,
the
did this person
imposter
do
syndrome kind of kick in? Like, what am I doing here?
the imposter syndrome always comes in. And as I've gotten older, I feel like it's something you really have to work on, to be like, you don't have to know everything. Like no one expects that of you. And the fact that you expect that of yourself is completely unreasonable. Like you're enough. And it's really hard to accept that. But this was definitely a few years ago. So I was fighting that a little bit more than I am now that I'm, 30. And I feel like once you're 30, that really helps once you get into your 30s.
Yeah.
You're just like,
the perspective's
fuck
there.
it. I know what I know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. You trust yourself more because you've gotten to know yourself more and what you're capable of. So I was nervous in the interview, and I remember I was honest. Like I was like, I haven't read like all of these things, but I'm so down to like read everything. Like I will work so hard at this. And then I think originally actually I didn't get it because the staffing needs changed for the channel. And then I was working at the time at Snakes and Lattes because I'm also a huge board game nerd.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that place.
And oh yeah, I love Snakes and Lattes. I worked there. How long did I even work there for? I want to say like 4 or 5 years. Like I worked there for a while.
We might have crossed paths then, like back in the day. Yeah, that's cool.
Probably. And I've worked at all the locations. So I was like a server, a bartender, a host, a game guru. For a while I was like like a supervisor, or really it would be like an assistant manager in most restaurant structures. So I wore a lot of hats there, and I was actually game guruing at the time, and I ran into Liam there.
Oh,
and
cool.
I was just like, oh, hey, Liam, because he was the person that I had chatted with, I think, on the phone, and he also interviewed me. So
okay, yeah. So yeah, for people who don't know, Liam is like kind of the guy who runs a lot of these channels that we work for.
Yeah, Liam's like kind of one of our top dogs. Liam's like
yeah.
this
So you
like,
kind of had
dude.
you met him like during your audition and everything, and then he showed up.
And then he showed up at Snakes, and he was just there. And I think he may even have been there with like some of the like most amazing crew. But I was game guruing, and I saw him at the wall, and then I was like, oh, hey, Liam. He's like, oh, hey, Amanda.
Yeah.
And he was like, yo, do you still want to like come work for the channel? And I was like, yeah. And then he was just like, cool. Do you want to come in like, I think it was like the next day, or it was like that weekend or something, maybe, or like
Nice.
maybe the beginning of the week. But he was like, do you want to come in like a day or two and like work? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, can you do that? And I was like, I will make that happen. Yeah, I can do that. And so I remember, I think I actually had to rearrange some shifts at Snakes to like make it happen. But I came, and then I was there sort of temporarily because I was kind of filling in and covering spots. And then eventually what happened is just like life took other people in other directions. And so then I was like the last woman standing, I guess, in this scenario. And so that is how I became a part of the channel. But it's really crazy because now people are like, you're like the person that started the channel. And I'm like, I've not been here since the beginning.
Yeah.
But I have been on the channel for like 2 years or something like that. So it has been a while, on and off.
Yeah, well, you definitely are the face too. And it's just like, I don't know, you got such a great cadence too, like when you're hosting and everything. Like I actually remember one day me and Taylor, who was another co-host on the channel as well, and me and him went for coffee, and I think just like I ended up binge watching a bunch of like Top 10 Nerds the night before. And we were just nice. Shooting the shit. We brought you up, and I'm like, Amanda's so good. I'm like a big Amanda fan. And then what's funny too is like an hour later, you sent me like a little message, and like we haven't really like talked much in the office. And I did like some funny videos with a comedian named Che, who was also on the show like months ago. But you wrote you really enjoyed something, and you even like you wrote, I'm a fan of you, and I'm like, no way, I'm a fan of you.
I know, I love that. Yo, your edits though are so good. Like they like blow my mind. Like on Vibe, like Top 10 Vibe is like just such a funny channel. And like now of course Che is moved on, but oh my goodness, that channel like cracks me up.
Yeah, that was fun. I'm not on that channel anymore, but it was a good time with me and Che and everything. And it was just I don't know, I felt like that was kind of like lightning in a bottle like energy, where we were just like feed off each other's like goofiness. And I got to keep in touch with them and work on something. I don't know, I don't even know what it would be, but it's just like there's like some weird chemistry with me and him. It's just fun, you know.
Dude, I feel that.
Yeah,
I reached out to Che actually after, and I was just like, dude, like we have to like play video games and like chill and like chat more, because I loved all of our chats. They were like so magical. And Che is just such like a sweet, just a sweet like weird human. Like I just,
yeah. That's probably why like
humans. Anyone that's a sweet weirdo is good.
That's probably why like the three of us just gravitate to each other. Even like I was thinking too,
Yeah.
it's cool about this podcast too, because we usually like see each other and like my brain's like half in work mode. And especially if I'm editing something, like it turns into like this weird, like introverted type thing where like I lose myself in the computer, and maybe somebody like you will walk by and be like, hey, I try to bring up like some small talk. And then it's like I'm so like in my own
Yeah.
head. I'm like, I don't know what I just said to her type of thing. But yeah, it's always like
I feel that.
when we do have like our little conversations, it's like they're always just super cool. Like I remember the one day we were talking about like sleep paralysis, and we were getting like super deep
Oh my
into it,
God,
and I
yes.
could feel everybody else's energy in the room getting like kind of uncomfortable, but me and you are just like,
Ron.
oh my God, like there's fucking other dimensions and beings.
These demons coming out at us. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I loved though that like we kind of drew everyone in with that conversation. Like we started having it like just casually, and then
Yeah.
everyone was like, what is this? This sounds terrifying. And we were
Yeah.
like, it's just so weird, but it's not scary.
Yeah. And then we just
It's
kept
so
pulling
scary though.
layers and layers off it. Of course, people are going to
Yeah.
gravitate to that. They're like, this is some freaky shit. Like,
I actually had another sleep paralysis experience like a few days ago too. It's so funny that you bring that up, but it was like I was in a dream and I was like someone, I forget exactly what happened, but there was like someone, a lady that like came through a door, like who was a friend of mine, and she just froze and then things got really intense in my dream and I knew I was experiencing sleep paralysis, but I was still kind of asleep. But it was like I went to go say something to her and I couldn't say anything in the dream and I was like, "Oh
ah,
shit. This is sleep paralysis. I'm about to wake up and not be able to move or speak, but be awake." And I was like, nope. And I just remember thinking in my brain, nope. And then I woke up like with my heart like pounding, but I wasn't in sleep paralysis. I was able to move. And I was like, oh, I love that I just like canceled that. Like I was like, not
yeah.
tonight.
Yeah. I think that was one thing we were talking about, how we both kind of learned to control it. And I had never met somebody else who said that. It's like I've had it like all my life since I was like a teenager, almost like probably like started when I was like 13, and I'm like
Okay.
I'm in my mid 30s now. But like over time I was so freaked out about it, I started reading up on it, like, and then like in my late 20s I realized like, oh, you can wake yourself up, you can, once you realize and like relax your body, which takes practice because it's fucking
It
terrifying.
does.
like
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
and that's all the stuff I read. It's like, you got to relax, and I'm like, how can you fucking relax, there's a demon over here. And then one day,
Trying to, people are like sitting on your chest. You're like, what's happening?
yeah,
Yeah,
one
it's horrifying.
yeah, one day I was having such a scary one, and this is when I realized it can be something like really beautiful. And people are probably gonna think I'm fucking crazy right now, but we're going there. But so I remember like as I was in sleep paralysis, what I read on this one forum, and it was some one guy wrote the vaguest thing. It was like, if you learn how to relax, something beautiful can happen. And I thought of that while I was in sleep paralysis, freaking out. I'm like, okay, let's relax.
Yeah.
I usually can't breathe in that state. I'm like, okay, I'm starting to breathe. I'm starting to breathe. And then it felt like this pulsing in my brain. And then, oh, I'm getting goosebumps talking about this right now. And then it was like this like crazy like energy of good that I haven't even felt like in the real realm. And then it felt like it was just like I was like a soul just floating around. And it was basically like a
Oh,
fucking
you
like,
astral projected.
yeah. And since then,
Yeah.
I've done that many times. But now, like this year, I keep trying to do it again. And every time I do it, like it just wakes me up. And I'm like, damn, I want to fucking fly
Oh,
around again. So it's like
yeah.
I
Yeah. You
lost my
definitely, you like
power.
astral projected is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Which I've also done before in my sleep. So, it's really, really cool. Which I also feel like this is so wild. Like people are gonna be listening to this and be like, what are they talking about?
Yeah, I get so
But,
vulnerable. Like I noticed too, I could see myself on like the Zoom screen, and I'm like kind of like crunched up, like talking about this shit. But yeah. Hey, it's this
but yeah, it's
happening, so.
it feels so good to do that, to astral project, and it's like really a really cool experience. It's almost like, I don't know if you feel this, but whenever I've entered a state like that in my sleep, it's like this complete freedom is what it feels like. And it's almost like you're not tethered to anything, but there's like this, it's so strange because like I just had this experience the other day where I was thinking about impermanence and this idea of everything changes and everything is gone, and like we don't really own anything in life. Like these are like, I'm wearing clothes, I own them technically, but these are just clothes, they're not really like my clothes, they just exist.
Yeah.
And the only thing you have is like not even your body, like the only thing you have is like whatever little essence is inside of you, your soul or your consciousness or whatever you want to call that. And I feel like that is the way that you feel the most tapped into what that is really you, is what astral projection is like for me all about. So I don't know, do you feel that like freedom when you experience it? What does it feel like?
I feel like two things. Yeah, exactly. You nailed it. Like just like this freedom that like I didn't have, like almost like I just broke out of like this shell of like stress and whatever, like things I didn't even know. And even like in a way, I feel like the day after it happens, like I'm a better human, like almost like unconsciously, like something was giving me like all this information. Like I compare it to like when people have like a deep like shroom trip or acid trip or whatever. It's almost like a natural way of doing that. And lots of people like they always say like when they report on it, it just seems like there's like another entity giving you all this information. And it's always been like something like soothing, like relaxing, like, and it would happen the most when I was feeling stressed too. There was a pattern of that, which was really weird. And this is getting really spacey, but it was almost like there was like something else like trying to save me from stress. And like the craziest astral projection I had was the day I got an eviction notice, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna fucking do, and blah blah blah. And I remember taking like almost a depression nap in the middle of the day. I'm like, what the fuck? And it happened, and I woke up and I felt so much energy, and it's just like, yo, I'm gonna turn this around. I'm gonna do, it's like like this,
it like empowered you.
I'm getting such goosebumps from here. And I'm also in the back of my mind getting so self-conscious. I'm like, oh, people are gonna listen to this, think I'm crazy, but you know what? You think that, fuck you, or cool, thanks for listening, whatever.
I mean, I personally think, I don't know, like I personally think there's a lot of people out there that experience these things. It's just like stuff that we don't talk about, right? It's just like stigma around, I don't know, talking about psychedelic experiences, but everything's out there. And I feel like the more in tune you are with the psychedelic things in the world, the more you find your truest self, I guess. It's this really cool thing. It's really interesting that it came from a place of such extreme stress for you, because like you were obviously going through something. Like getting an eviction notice is like, I have to literally figure this all out. Like I have to leave the place. I don't have, you feel completely displaced. So it's so interesting, in that displacement, you're able to find this like energy and purpose. But I think that sometimes is the state of the world. It's like when we get too controlling and we're like grabbing onto everything is when we can be the most shook. And it's almost like in the exception. Ooh, I became blurry. In
I'm
the
kind of
exception. Oh yeah. We focus our cameras. We're tripping our cameras out. That's what's happening.
Luckily, most people listen to this on Spotify, so it's all good.
Perfect. So if they don't know this, you can't see our blurriness, but it was pretty epic. It was
for the 15 people on YouTube. It's like they're probably like adjusting. Well, like, I guess if they had like they're watching this on a tube TV, like the tracking and the contrast is.
It's off. But it's kind of this freedom, I think, in detaching from that control. And when you kind of accept that you have control of literally nothing, it's just so freeing. It's like, oh, so like it doesn't really matter, and I can probably do anything because all of the control that I thought I had is not real. So it's fine. So I'll be fine, I guess.
Oh,
but
man,
that's what it is. It's weird.
I feel like I needed to hear this a couple days ago. I was stressed, and now like you're just kind of bringing back that vibe or whatever of just
it's really hard though when you're stressing to even go to that place. So I mean, I 100% feel you, especially with this like pandemic and everything that's been going on. Like working from home has been such an experience, and definitely last not last week, but the week before, I was like so depressed, and I was just like, I feel like I'm stuck in this little box in my apartment, and I work every day. And then when I finish work, I work on my own projects, and then I go to bed and I get up and I do it again. And I was like, I feel like I'm stuck in a loop that I have no control over, even though I'm choosing to do all of these things. And I had to just kind of like stop and be like, this is all, like, this too will pass. Like, whatever is going on for you right now, you just need to accept it. And you also have to understand that you have the power to understand how you want to approach all of this stuff. That is what you can control. All you can control is your own like perspective on things, and that's like it. So it was like, I just need to like breathe through this and take more time to acknowledge my stress and like work through it, and not just I don't know if you get like this, but I'll like stress out and stress out and stress out, and then it's almost like you get stuck in this weird loop where it's no longer about whatever is stressing you out. It's actually about like the stress. So you're like, I'm stressed because of whatever, because like I forgot to walk my dog today. And then it's like, I'm so stressed about that. And then you're like, I'm just stressed. I'm stressed because I'm stressed. And the stress is giving me extra stress. And now I'm super stressed. And you're like, is this even about what we were stressed about? Or am I just like literally doing this to myself?
Yeah. I also believe it's just like kind of like you receive the type of energy you put out too. And it's just like when you get in that loop of stress too,
100%.
it's like you just start living in it. Like and it's just like, this is life right now. Fuck everything. And then you can go the opposite way too, when you're just feeling good and you end up like waking up in the morning, having like a strong coffee, listen to some good music, and the rest of your day is just fucking awesome, you know, because you're just kind of like have that vibe. And people like I don't know, they're acceptable to human energies as well too. Like you can see somebody who's having a bad day and you have that vibe and you might perk them up a bit and then turn their day around and everything. And it's so interesting.
It is all about like energy and where you choose to put it and how you want to approach it. 100%. It's so weird though how like one thing in your day can completely change it and derail you. Like I always think that's so weird when it's like, oh, this one thing went wrong and now for some reason it's the end of the world. Like what happened?
Yeah. Humanity's so weird, Amanda. I didn't expect to go down this rabbit hole, but weird. I love this conversation.
I'm always going down rabbit holes. So if you ever take me to a rabbit hole, I will lead you through it. I'll be like, let's go.
Yeah. Well, after the pandemic, we're gonna have to like freak out the office again and just start talking about like all this weird shit.
I'm so excited for when we'll actually be able to like just chill and like socialize, because obviously because we've had this pandemic, anytime we have managed to be in the office with the lockdown procedures being lightened, it's like we all have to distance and we all can't really like hang out, and it's just so weird. And normally everyone hangs out with everyone, so it's like this weird like removal. You're like, everyone's at arm's length and you're like, I just want to hug everyone, but I can't.
I feel you. And I feel like it's in a way changing me. Like it's giving me like I've originally, like I'm always like a little socially awkward, with this whole like pandemic thing puts an extra layer on it, because I keep like I'm so conscious of not making, or I'm trying to be conscious of not making other people uncomfortable. So it's just like I'm like, oh, am I too close? Like make sure my mask is on. And like prior to this whole fucking thing, like 2 years ago, I'm all high fives and hugs and just like, and I feel like just such a huge piece of my personality is like taken away, and it's like turned into like this guy who's just like kind of tiptoeing around like in a timid way and just making sure he's fully distanced. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if like what it's gonna be like when we finally like can all like be together, or like how I'm gonna act. Is there gonna be like a transition of me getting back to like who I was, or am I just this guy now who's like like still tiptoeing around? Like it's really weird. Like
so many people that I've talked to have been saying, I don't know what it's going to be like, and I'm kind of worried that like this will permeate into wherever we go from here. And my opinion on that is like, I personally think that we will make the shift, but there will be a transition. But it's also about like how much of a transition do you want to have? It's like this weird thing of like, you can't control, once again, it's like, you can't control anything, but you know what you can control? You can control like your own like thoughts. That's something you kind of have some power and influence over. So it's just like, I don't know. I feel like once we're ready, we'll just be ready. And like, I just trust that like it'll go back to some sense of normal. Whatever that normal is, I think will depend on just what people are comfortable with.
Hmm.
So, but
Yeah.
that's also fine. As long as everyone's comfortable, that's all I care about. I just want everyone to be like comfy and
Yeah.
like feel good.
Yeah.
So,
I think people like me and you too, we kind of lucked out in like a work situation too, being able to do like online entertainment for people. And yeah, it's
yeah.
like before like even before I met you, I didn't even consider myself as like a full-time video editor, which kind of became like my
Yeah.
identity for like the past few months now. But yeah, I
It's
was
so
just
weird how
yeah.
it like shifts everything working online. Like that's the same thing. Like people now are like, "Oh, you're a YouTuber." And it's like, I mean, I'm an actor. Like that's how I
Yeah,
identify.
yeah.
But I am a YouTuber because that's what a lot of people know me for. But I'm just like, I mean, I do so many things. But being an online personality or an online content creator is like, oh, it's such a weird experience.
Yeah. I guess there's like pros and cons to it too, like with being, I don't know, I guess watched by so many people. Like on one hand,
Mm-hmm.
there's people who like really really appreciate it. You probably get lovely messages too. And then on the other hand, like you're going to
Yeah.
come across some fucking weirdos. And even like your
Oh,
platform
100%.
has a million subscribers and my little thing is just like a tight knit community, and I still get these messages from like strangers that just like really like freak me out. Like, oh, this guy's gonna slit my
Freak you
throat, or
out.
yeah, or just like people
Yeah,
angry about podcasts and stuff. I'm like, yo, I'm just a guy in my bedroom just
sure.
talking about creativity. Like, what did I do to like offend you or whatever? But yeah, and I can
Yeah,
imagine
I don't
like
know.
on a
I
bigger
think there's a lot
scale,
of
like
that energy.
yeah. Do you do like any like routines to like filter out like that craziness, or do you like not read comments, or do you have like a little thing you do? I know some like content creators will put
That's a good
stuff up and
question.
not like dive into the comments or whatever, but I feel like I'm the opposite. I'm like, oh, what
I
are
like to
people
dive
talking
into the
about?
comments
Yeah.
actually. Yeah, yeah. I like to dive into the comments. I think it's like moderation. I think it's like anything in life, right? Like
Hmm.
being online, social media, all of this stuff has an impact on our mental health. And we work in the nitty gritty of it. So we're really putting our minds at high risk because we are constantly dipping into these, we're constantly making ourselves vulnerable in a way. But it's
Yeah.
like anything, like you can choose. The great thing when you're a content creator is you get to choose what you're comfortable with. So if you, there are parts of your life that you don't want to open up, you don't have to open those up. That's up to you. But you kind of have to accept that like once you become a person that, you know, a million people are watching or whatever, there's going to be people that are just going to dig up stuff in your life and want to do that. And you kind of just have to, I think, trust that like you know who you are and you're good. But I think it can be so scary for people that don't really know that that's going to be a part of it, or have, or aren't as secure in who they are.
Yeah.
Because then it's like looking into a mirror where people are telling you who you are, and because you're not sure, that's going to inform your opinion of yourself. I forget what they call it, but it's in psychology. There is, and in sociology, there is this concept that is, uh, what is it called? It's when you basically endow someone with something. So it's like if I say, you know, oh, Sarah is stupid,
Mhm.
right? If I say that, then whoever Sarah is as a content creator, if she isn't as like solid in who she is, Sarah
Yeah.
might read that, and now all of a sudden, although Sarah would have never thought she was stupid, now all of a sudden Sarah is taking that in. And when you take those things in, it can also inform your behavior. So Sarah, who might be a very intelligent person, might start acting stupid because now she identifies as that. And
Ah,
that is
yeah.
the danger of comments and all of that. But I try to practice a lot of like meditation, a lot of yoga, a lot of calming practices where I can just stay in tune. I have a therapist. I think all of that stuff is important, especially when you work heavily in a social media atmosphere, to balance you. And what I try to do is like through my therapist, I found many different things that I can do, I guess, to be balanced. Like when things get to me, I sometimes do like little Venn diagrams of sort of like the things that you have like complete control over, the things that you have less control over, and the things that you have like no control over, to just kind of put into perspective people's takes on me and how it affects me or doesn't affect me. And then the other thing is examining a statement that somebody gives you and trying to actually discern if you feel it's true. So the interesting thing is, if somebody calls you stupid, you look at that, and rather than just take it in and be like, I'm stupid, you don't just take it in, you question it. You say, am I actually stupid? Or does this comment have no merits? And how much does this person even know about me to say the thing? Right? So it's like someone that I've known for 20 years saying I'm stupid should hold more weight than a random comment from somebody online I don't even know.
Yeah, that's really
but
important.
It doesn't sometimes, which is weird because we all are so receptive. So when you're that receptive, it's like a stranger's opinion can hit you like a ton of bricks. So you have to mentally take the effort to look at it if you want to go in there and actually like weigh it on a scale and be like, does this matter, or is this not even, should I just not even care about this?
Yeah.
Also, not indulging negative things as much as you indulge positive things. So when people give me a compliment that is like genuine and sweet, like yesterday actually I was on Twitter and I was checking my Twitter last night, and someone sent a message the other day, to a video message that was just talking about myself and some other content creators online that they really loved, and they just sent a little tweet with a video being like, hey, I just wanted to say I hope you're all having a great weekend. I love all of your content. It like brings a lot of like happiness into my day, and have a great weekend. And I was like, this is right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's the stuff I try to give the attention to, is the positivity. And like you said earlier, what you put out in the world, I believe you get it back. So if I see positivity, I want to encourage people to love each other and appreciate not even just me, but like each other. And when I see people being negative to each other or to me, I just try to be like, I'm just not going to like put into that negativity. Of course, sometimes people are constructive and it's like constructive criticism, and then I have no problem with that. I think that's great. There's so many things that I've said in videos. Like, I'm a human being. I make mistakes all the time. And when I make mistakes, I actually love when people come in and are like, oh, actually, like I read this, or I'm from this area in the world, and like this is how we pronounce it here, and this is actually like the etymology of this name or something like that. And I'm like, oh shit, I didn't even know that, and now I have something I can like dig into and do research on. So like, thank you for sharing knowledge. That's beautiful.
Yeah, sometimes the best lesson is a good mistake too, like, because other way you wouldn't have found out that information, you know. That's amazing. And a lot of things you said,
and learning,
go ahead. Sorry,
I was going to say, learning is
you.
mistakes.
Yeah.
No, it's all good. Learning is mistakes. And so people also get, it's really weird on YouTube because people are so critical.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in the fandom communities, people can be quite, and I'm also guilty of this. I've been the person online when somebody gets something wrong, I'm like, well, actually it's this. And then I have to rein myself in because I'm like, who cares? Like, let this person be and let them be their beautiful self. But when you mess up, like, it's an opportunity for you to grow. So it's weird to me when people are like, you messed up, like your life is over. And you're like,
yeah.
I mean, my life is still almost like beginning every day.
Yeah, in their head, it's like they'd be like the people like back in like the 1600s, like the first person to burn the witch. You know, it's just like let's put him on a stake. Like those are people, real people in YouTube comments. It's just like the modern version of that type of thing.
Well, and I think a lot of that stuff too. The other thing you have to take in when people are giving you any kind of like really harsh criticism or something that's really coming from a negative place is like, what could be going on for this person that would make them say this? Because I'm always just like, do you know how much effort it takes to write a comment on a video? Most people don't even comment. So if you are going out of your way to say something that is so that is coming from this place, it's like, I'm always like, I hope this person is okay, because this is obviously less about me than it is about them.
Yeah, actually, I had an interesting experience. Right now, I'm helping manage like one of the channels, and somebody wrote a comment like that, and I was conscious of what you were thinking about, and it was like a channel that's used to have like well, it still has like a lot of subscribers, but it's like doesn't have the numbers anymore. And somebody wrote,
Okay, yeah.
somebody just wrote like how, oh, this is falling off. It's like this many subscribers and this many views. And then all I wrote is like, I'm on the official like channel name and everything. I'm like, well, I appreciate you coming by for the view. And then they wrote back like almost in a panic, like multiple comments, like, oh, I'm so sorry. I actually love you guys, blah, blah, blah. But they said such like a douchey, like cunty thing. And I just responded like
Yeah.
with just like
With
love.
love.
Yeah. And it just,
Yeah.
look at
That's
love,
all it
love
is,
is
man.
strong.
It's
Love
choosing
can,
love
yeah,
every
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah, it is. And that is often, if I'm going to respond to something negative, I always try to meet someone at a place that's like, you are seen. You are seen. Because I think when people come and say that stuff, honestly, those people are probably going through a lot of things where they feel so lost. And I know what it's like to feel lost. Like, I know what it's like to be in a room with like 30 people that are there. We're all there to celebrate, like maybe even me, like maybe on my birthday. Like when I was in my 20s, there were times when I would have parties and I would just feel so alone. And it's like, you're surrounded by people who love you. How can you feel alone? But I honestly think that a lot of people are going through that, especially right now. And so when people do that, it's so funny. I've also responded to comments before like that. And it is so funny how many people on a dime will instantly be like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for commenting. And like, I love you. And you're like, wow, you came here with such negativity. And now all there is love. Like, this is so kind of weird, but beautiful. In a strange way.
It's like almost like what's it, that movie, The Christmas Story, where Scrooge he's like such a asshole, and then like all the ghosts like show him love, and then the next day he's like, oh, here's a goose, and just like but it's like,
but I think it's
so
too,
weird.
It's like a lot of people that have probably experienced negativity in their life, and so the way that they reach out for attention, to them maybe that was their backstory. I also have this thing where like my therapist says this to me, that I am empathic to the level that I sometimes like become too focused on others, and I like need to focus more on myself to take care of me. But I do that, and when people come with negativity, I'm always like so concerned for like those people, because I'm just like, what happened to you that you think this is the best way to reach out to someone? Because then it makes me think that in your life, the only thing you experienced was attention only comes from people like hating. And I'm like, that's so sad.
And
it makes me sad to think about.
And I relate to that too, where it's just like, I don't know, a lot of my day and thoughts, it's kind of, I don't know, I'm trying to articulate it, but it's just like putting others before myself in a way, and it's almost to my own detriment a lot, where like some days it's just like, Sean, just fucking do you, kick some ass. When I do have those days, like it feels so good, but I don't know, it's just like whether it's just something that hit me growing up or just the people I was around. It's like I always like put others like just first before myself, and it's something I'm trying to shift to, but it's became like such a pattern where I don't know. It's like sometimes it's okay.
A form of escapism. Usually for people. I think that as someone that also does that, I know for me, I think a lot of it is a way for me to avoid my own traumas and my own life experience that is hard. And rather than deal with my stuff, it's easier for me to help you deal with your stuff. And in a way, some people say that people do that because in me helping you, it feels like I'm fixing a part of myself, when I'm really not. I'm ignoring it. But because I'm watching you heal, because I'm part of the healing experience with you, it's like I get the residual healing energy from it. So I think we help people to help ourselves, which is beautiful, but we also help people to avoid helping ourselves.
It's almost like just like a weird vicarious way of like, I don't know, living through them, when really it's like, yo, I got my own shit to take care of. Oh yeah.
Well, because it's like, if you're constantly taking care of other people, who's taking care of you, right? Like, and you can't put that on other people. You can't expect other people all the time to show up for you, because that's not certain. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't expect people to show up for you. I mean, people that you love should do that, but and that love you, right? But if you don't do it, like if you know, what's that thing that RuPaul says, if you don't love yourself, how the hell is anybody else supposed to love you? You know what I mean?
Shout outs to
That is
RuPaul.
so true. Yes, shout outs to RuPaul. RuPaul, anytime you want to come chat with us, come on down.
Yeah. If I ever get
Such a
RuPaul
wise human.
as a guest, like you're my co-host for that one.
Great,
That's a
excellent. I'm so
strong
down.
that's a strong like point and everything. And
Yeah.
I love how this conversation, like every time I gotta tell you, every time I do a podcast, I put a little bit of bullet notes, like not full questions, just these are some topics I'm gonna hit and segue between them. We talked about like the first thing, and now we're just like in space right now, man, and I love it. It's like I'm just gonna throw this piece of paper out. I love it.
Yeah.
This was such like a little like free flowing like conversation and everything, and yeah, it's
Yeah.
I can't believe it's almost been an hour already. Fuck.
Dude, yeah, it's almost been an hour, and it's like time flies, but it is one of those things where I don't know. I feel like every time I talk about anything though, it always comes back in some way to psychology and mental health. And it's strange because I definitely have a passion for those things as well, although I've never really done anything explicit with it. But it's so funny. It's so funny what you were saying at the beginning about like when you love something and you turn it into a hustle, and
Yeah.
it's like you love it so much that you like make it a job. And I love that when we make content, you get to like bleed into all these different areas, because the cool thing about writing about comics and doing videos on that is that because it's literature, there are so many places books take us. There are so many journeys you can go on. And so what I love is like I get to do lists on like diversity in comic books. I get to do lists on like random stuff. Like I did a list that I was so hyped about, just about how many times Iron Man has been like killed by the Avengers, by his own friends and his own team. And but then I also get to do stuff on like mental health.
Yeah.
And I think that's so great because it's like all of the things you love, you get to cover because it's books, and everything's in a book at some point, especially in comics where we have like 80 years of content.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That's amazing too. And yeah, you got like such a knack of like being like such a great communicator and very lovable personality too. I could even see you like if you ever get bored of like the comic stuff, like you becoming like a therapist yourself. Like there's something just very soothing about talking to you, and you're just very I don't know, warm and friendly in a way where people could learn a lot and be very acceptable to like just such like a kind presence, you know, like you're not intimidating, you're very approachable, but you also have all this knowledge on just, I don't know, just mental health and meditation and stuff like that too. So I don't know if ever one day you
Thank
want to
you. Yeah,
explore that. Like I feel like you got a really like good knack for, I can't even think of a job title, but like something in that bubble, you know.
Yeah, and I have had people before be like, "Oh, you should like go do this," or like you should like help. Like people have also come to me because I've done this content and because I've talked about mental health, and I do think it's very important. There are lots of people that come to me, they're like, "What should I do in like this scenario?" And I'm like, I am not like a licensed person, so I cannot give you advice that is sound, is what I like to tell people. Like my advice is my personal experiences, but I think definitely an advocate for things is something that I see myself as sometimes. And like with my love of the earth and of the oceans, and like I love like conservationism, I love like therapy, I love mental health, I love fandoms, I love community. There are so many things that I'm just like, all these things make me feel good, and so I just want to like share them with people. I love history, so there's like so many random things.
Yeah.
It's so funny though, because when you are, especially as an actor, you get like put into like a little box. People want to typecast you, and so people see you and they go, "Oh, you're the this thing," and that's like it. And so it's really weird to be a performer that, I mean, I do get typecast from time to time, but I'm also the person that goes out for like everything. Like I don't often get put in boxes because I don't think people know where to put me in boxes, because I do so many weird things. But it's also strange because then people watch you and they're like, "Oh, you're comics," and that's like your thing. And I'm like, I mean, I love lots of stuff. And then people are like, oh, you also, it's weird when people are like, oh, you love comics. Do you love any other nerdy things? And it's like, oh my God, yes, like so many
Yeah.
things. But people will be like, oh, what are the things? And then I have to list them. I
Yeah.
don't, this is also a weird, this is going to get into a weird sexist place for a second, but it
That's
is a
okay.
question that I find as a woman, I get asked a lot of kind of like qualifier questions, is what I like to call them.
Yeah.
So people will sometimes interview me or have me on a show, and like some of the questions will be like, oh, you know, normal questions like, when did you start getting into this thing? And then it'll be like, what are all of the things that you like have read? What are all of the interests that you have? Like, could you list them? As
Almost
though
like
it's
they
like,
want like a
here's my
resume from you.
credits.
Yeah, like fuck.
Exactly. Even though, like, you know, you've been doing something for 2 years, but it's very interesting when I go into that stuff and then people are like, oh my God, you love like horror, you love like vampires, you love Anne Rice, you read like old Roman history books. Like
Yeah.
I have like a
You
collection of
stream on
historical
Twitch as
texts.
well. Actually, I jumped in on one of
Sometimes, yeah.
your streams and it
Yeah,
wouldn't
I
let
saw
me,
you in there.
yeah, it wouldn't let me comment unless I like you have a filter unless you hang out for over like a half an hour, and I could only stay
Yeah.
for like 20 minutes, but I was trying to like cheer you on playing Fall Guys like a few weeks ago or something.
Oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
love Fall Guys. But it's this very strange thing, yeah, where people want to kind of put you into a category, and then it's very weird to me that we like to do that so much. I mean, I get why we do it in terms of our brain wiring, because it's easier for you to organize information that way in your brain. So if you find yourself stereotyping someone and you're like, oh my God, I'm the worst person in the world, like stereotyping is a normal thing in your brain. What the only thing that's bad is if you act on a stereotype as opposed to like questioning, like, you know, you can use that to organize information, but basically don't treat people like they're a cookie cutter, because no one is.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah.
weird that we try to make people that. And I'm like, why are we doing this when people are so complex? Like,
Yeah.
no one is one thing ever.
Yeah. We're all human too. And even like it's funny too, like being in our work environment too, like this is kind of like a gig I picked up just because my industry kind of crumbled from like the pandemic and shit, and it's just like, oh, I can video edit, and like I met Johnny, he's like, oh, come in, and I started working or whatever. But now it's like in our circle or whatever, everybody's just like, oh, Sean, he's the editor, he's the great editor, like the word editor too. And it just kind of like, I don't know, it doesn't sit right with me, even though that's what I'm doing. But it was like you saying, you're like more than one thing, and it's like it's not
It's
just like
probably
this.
because it's not how you exclusively identify, right? It's like
Yeah,
when people,
yeah,
it's the same thing. When people are like, oh, you're a YouTuber or
yeah,
you're an
yeah,
influencer. And I'm like, that's something I do, but that's not who I am. I
yeah.
just did actually a really interesting workshop with this person called with Nicole Hodges, I believe her name is, who is how do I want to say this? She's like a sexuality like philosopher, and like
Oh,
talks a lot
cool.
about um, yeah, sexuality and communication and a lot of these things. And I just did a dominant and submissive workshop, which was very interesting, diving
that's
into
that's
sort of dominant
awesome.
and submissive, yeah, personalities. But it was really interesting to kind of get into this idea of identity, and we kind of just scratched the surface with some of it. But this question of, when you ask yourself, who am I, who am I, what is the answer you give people? Or when someone meets you and they go, oh, who are you, you would usually say like, oh, I'm Amanda McKnight. And then they would say, oh, like, who are you? And you'd be like, oh, I'm an actor, I'm a YouTuber, but
Yeah,
none of these things are really who we are, right? Like, we're not our professions, we're not our names. What
facts.
are we? I
Yeah.
don't know, but
Yeah.
it's complex.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's a
And
lot.
I
You
love,
can't, because that's the
yeah.
thing. We say these things because we can't give an answer that's like, who am I? I am like the whisper of the wind. I am like,
Yeah.
all these
Oh,
ridiculous
that'd be
things.
sick. Now I want to have like a little like tagline like that. Like almost like when you like that's like how they introduce themselves in like Game of Thrones. It's like, this is so and so, the great warrior of blah blah blah, and it's like they got this badass title or whatever. It's like, why don't we have
Like
shit like that?
crazy titles. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Even like
But
I
that's
don't.
the thing.
Yeah,
It's weird. It's a weird thing. So it makes sense to me that when someone says like, "Oh, that's Sean. He's the editor. He's like this great editor." It's like, am I the great editor? Is that who I
yeah,
am?
yeah,
Or am I something that's more than just this one title?
yeah,
Am
for
I
sure.
12 titles, or am I like, there's no title for me? Like, I
Yeah.
don't fit into anything.
Yeah, I feel like too, like especially like with the older generation, or like our generation right now, I feel like people aren't just like, they don't have one job. Like housing market's all fucked. Like we have all these side hustles. Like we're doing like 30 different things at times. But back in like parents and beyond, like even older, like grandparents and stuff like that, they always have like the questions if I like meet them at like a wedding or something, like just that older generation. And they're always like, oh, what do you do? And it's just like, because then they I feel like back in the day people would identify themselves as whatever their job was, which I feel so
Yeah.
disconnected with that for some reason, where it's just like, I'm not
Yeah.
my job, I'm something else. And sometimes I just take these jobs because it's something to pay to keep the roof over my head or whatever. It's like not my identity. And like even a while, like when I
Oh
moved
my
to,
goodness.
yeah, when I moved
I
to
was just gonna say,
Toronto, I
have
was
you
doing
ever had
construction
it?
and shit. And I'm like, I'm not a construction worker, but I guess I'm doing
Yeah,
that
that's
for
what I was
now.
gonna
Like,
say.
yeah,
Oh my gosh. Have
yeah,
you ever had that of like when you're like, because as an artist, right? Like as someone, like I think if I had to like sum up anything of like what I am, the easiest way for me to say it in one word is an artist, which just means I make art. That's my thing.
yeah,
Which even then, like I said, I don't think what you do is who you are, but it is something that informs people on who you are, on what kind of person you are. But I don't know, it sounds like you have had this experience, but when you're an artist and you're working and you know, you have your Joe job, as we usually call it, and like as a server, people would say, when I used to travel back when that was a thing, we'll get back to there eventually,
yeah,
but I would travel, and you know when you're going through the customs and they ask you like, oh, like what's your profession or whatever, um it was so weird to even make that shift to being like a full-time content creator and performer, where I was like, I'm not going to be able to say server anymore. um
that's got to be a good
and
feeling
that
too,
was,
where
it
you're
was
like,
good, but it
yeah,
felt weird. It felt
yeah,
like wrong because I was so used to people saying to me, like at a party where I meet someone, people go, oh, like this is Amanda. And then they'd be like, oh, Amanda, like, what do you do? And I'd be like, oh, like I'm an actor. And they'd be like, oh, but like, what's your job?
yeah.
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 Have you ever gotten like that question where you're
I
like,
all the
I
time.
mean, I serve.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, so that's what you really do. As though like, because as an artist, it's not a real job. And I always
Yeah.
think that's so weird. And I definitely got going through, although this could have just been me putting it on someone else because I had insecurities. But
Hmm.
when I was going through customs, I remember the first time I had to say like, oh, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a content creator. Um, the person just being like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a content creator. And they were like, oh, okay, well, have a good trip. And I felt
Yeah,
like they were
yeah.
kind of just like, good luck with your life. That sounds not like a real thing, but all right.
Yeah. Yeah. Like they don't understand that you're actually like working full time and making money from it too. It's like, and you,
Yeah, that's your job.
yeah, yeah. And it's crazy. Like, I say this all the time. Like lots of people will see somebody like on YouTube and they're like, oh, they're just talking about comics, they're just talking bullshit or whatever. But there is so much you
Yeah,
do around it. Like you're there 8 hours a day, like it's like a 9 to 5 plus, like you're researching
yeah.
all this shit and stuff. It's just like it never ends. And that's something that I really like respect about like kind of seeing behind the curtain of like all you guys, just how you hustle or whatever. But I know like a lot of people are just like, oh yeah,
So
they
much
just they're
hustle
just they're
between
just having
everyone.
fun on YouTube or whatever. They don't see the other layers of just like,
I mean,
I don't know,
and it
yeah.
is fun. Like
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh, your job must be like the best." And I'm like, "My job is the best. Like I love everything I do." I don't think I've ever worked a job. I did work one job. I don't want to like, I don't know if I should say the restaurant because I don't want to like diss
Yeah, you
anyone.
don't have to
But I
put
did
them on
work at
blast,
a
but
restaurant
yeah.
one time where, and I mean, where it was still fun, but it was just so much work that it was like taking away from the experience. And I think why I love serving and why I've loved that industry is because I just love people. So I
Yeah,
love that I
yeah.
just get to interact with people, and I love good food and good drinks. So it's like you get to bring people an experience that is, you know, a memory that will never happen to them in the same way again. And you get to
Mm.
meet unique and interesting people. But that's the only place I think I've ever worked was this one restaurant, this one brew house that I worked at that was not fun all the time. It was still some fun. But other than that, every other job I've ever done, I have loved it. And people are like, what do they pay you to like make you love this? And I'm like, No, I just don't go to jobs for like money. I go to jobs that I'm like, this is something I believe in and I love it. So it is fun, but it is a grind. And I
Yeah.
think what people don't understand when they see you on YouTube is they just think, oh, you just show up and say some things about comics. And it's like, there's a lot of research that goes into it. I do a lot of like checking on my stuff to make sure that everything I'm saying so that I can avoid making mistakes. And even then, I only have so much time to put into content. So I still
Yeah.
make mistakes because
Yeah.
I'm a human being.
Yeah. And also like it's
But
just
and
like
then it's
you're not a
after your
random
job is
person. Like
done, your work is
you
not done.
yeah, you've worked and earned the position too, which I don't think people like sometimes understand when they see certain YouTubers or stuff. It's just like, oh, this person just plays video games
Oh,
or
well,
whatever.
because
Like they
everyone,
like, like
yeah, because everyone feels like they can do it because they're like, oh, I read comics, I play video games, I could make the content, but they don't
yeah.
understand the other elements that go into it. And I mean, maybe they could make the content. I always say to people when they're like, oh, I could do this job, I'm like, oh, you should go do it then. If you want
Yeah.
to do it,
Yeah.
not even like being a jerk about it. Like I genuinely mean, if you're like, I could do this, if you want to, like, please
Yeah.
make content, live your best life, be happy.
Yeah, fuck yeah. I'm always encouraging too. And I also notice a pattern too, not to discourage people from starting podcasts or whatever, but I get a lot of people
No.
asking like how to start up. And sometimes I'll see them do a couple episodes and then it hits them how much work there is around it. And
Work.
it's not just
Yeah.
talking. And yeah, and then it's just like I don't see their podcast pop up anymore or whatever. And it's like a crazy cycle. And almost I feel insane sometimes of how much it takes to get like episodes out, but at the same time it's like I don't know if you ever feel like this with what you're doing. It's almost turned into like this unconscious flow where I'm like I'm supposed to be doing this even though sometimes it's just like it's late at night, I'm fucking exhausted, I'm putting something together editing, I'm like, oh,
Oh,
I wish I could be
100%.
sleep. But there's just something like it's almost like this unconscious force guiding me towards like doing this in a way where
Yeah, it's like you're
yeah.
kind of like enthralled. Like you're like, I have no choice. I must make the art. Like
Yeah.
I know what you mean entirely because I've had days where I've, worked for 8 hours at this studio or at home working on content and then finished my day and then rolled right into the next thing and made content for whatever my own channels, my Twitch or my YouTube or like my OnlyFans or whatever I'm doing organizing shoots, doing videos, and then it's like I'm done that and then I'm like, cool, I have self tapes to do for films or commercials or whatever, and it's like I'm so tired and by the end of the day I'm like, wow, I just worked for like over 12 hours and I still have this to do. And I'm just like, okay, let's go. And I'm just like, I don't
Yeah.
know how I still have energy for this,
Yeah.
but it has to get done. I filmed the self tape a while ago, like at midnight a while ago, and I had to like do a whole thing and like dance to music and like but it was so much fun. It was so weird how I started it being like, oh, I'm so tired. I don't know if I can do this. And then when I finished it, I was like so awake. Like it energizes you in a weird way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You find energy reserves that you didn't know existed when you love something.
Yeah. I also find like the first step into like any type of project or whatever is always the hardest. Like you're overthinking it, you're
The
just
hardest, yeah.
tired. But once you get that momentum, and I'm totally momentum based, it's just like taking that first step, it's just like, okay, then I just snowball and then I turn into an avalanche,
Yeah.
it's like, here we're going. And even like how
Sometimes I get
yeah.
like hung up on planning and then I realize like, okay, I just need to stop planning and just like do it because I'm trying to distract myself so that I don't have to start. I'm procrastinating. And I know as soon as I start, it's just going to snowball. So I just need to go.
Yeah, yeah. Even like I felt like I was having so much momentum with the podcast and even how we had to reschedule this one. Like I had a little fire in the apartment above me and they were redoing all the electricity in the
Yeah. Oh
house.
my
Yeah,
gosh.
remember that day? Like that was the most valid excuse I
That
had
was
for a
crazy,
cancellation. I'm
man.
like, Amanda, my house is on fire. I can't do the fucking thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
but like again, back to the momentum base, it's like, so it took a month. They redid all the electricity in here, it's all safe, but it took me like almost like another 3 weeks to start getting the podcast momentum again too. I don't know, because it came to
Yeah.
such like a halt. and it's just like, I don't know what it is with me, but it's
Once you
just like,
stop, it's really
yeah,
hard to start back.
yeah,
That is totally a thing that I feel as well, because I feel like once you stop, it's like this defeatist thing that I get, where I kind of feel like, oh no, like how am I gonna catch up, is what I
yeah,
feel like. But the weird thing is, when especially when you're making your own content, there's this weird, this is, I think, the imposter syndrome as well that comes in, where you kind of go like, oh no, like I'm so behind now, how will I ever catch up? And it's like, dude, this is your own, you're your own
yeah.
boss. What are you talking about? You're
Yeah,
behind.
yeah. I almost like get too
Like there's
far in my
some guy
head.
behind you that's like, hurry up. There's
Yeah.
no one there. Like, it's just me.
It's just my sleep paralysis demon just being like, why haven't you edited that show? You were supposed to have. There's people on your Patreon. You haven't put anything up in two
Right.
weeks. It's just like, fuck.
But and if people love you, honestly, if people love you and they appreciate your content, and there are so many, as much as we've talked about the people that, you know, want to critique and all of those things, who, like I said, I think are just really lonely.
Yeah.
Um, there's so many people out there that love and appreciate the content you make, and it's just like, you have to trust that like your stuff is good enough that people will wait for you, because
Yeah.
they love what you do and they just want to support you as a creator. And but it's hard to accept that, because you're like, oh, everyone's thinking that I'm awful, when it's like, no one's thinking that you're awful, you're
Yeah.
thinking that you're awful.
Yeah.
Stop
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Stop that.
Yeah.
Be
You,
kind to you.
yeah.
Love
That's,
you.
yeah. Love wins in the end. And it's not just like outward. You got to love yourself inward, which I'm trying to do more. I'm trying to work on that, you know. That's
It's
been the
hard though,
theme.
man.
Yeah.
Fuck, it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's, and it's so funny when you even like, you know, stop something and then you're trying to kickstart it again, and you're like stuck in this rut, and you're like, fuck, like I feel like I can't start this because I dropped it, and now what does it say about me that I dropped it, and all of these things you get in your head about. And then
Mm-hmm.
it's like, even when I have those things, it also is hard to express that, because as you as a creator want to say to people, hey, you know what, you might see me and think, oh, this person has their shit together. But even I sometimes, I'm like, fuck, can I even do this? What am I doing with my life? Is this the right thing?
Yeah.
Am I good enough? And when I share that too, there's so many people that want to boost you, which is lovely. But I also get people that are like, what are you talking about? You're so great. You can't like feel insecure. And it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
no, what?
I'm human, please. I just need to talk to
Yeah.
somebody right now. You know, like,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
like, no, I can feel insecure, and I think everyone does. And
Yeah.
but it is strange, like even these big celebrities that we see, right? Like it's that question of, you know, do people like Idris Elba ever look at themselves and be like, man, I suck? Like, I'm
Yeah.
sure he does that. But it's like, I'm sure if he was like, you know, the other day I looked at myself in the mirror and I thought I hate myself. It's like people would be like, but you're Idris Elba, you're amazing. And he'd be like, so? I'm
Yeah.
not always amazing to me.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Amanda, I feel like I can talk to you forever. I don't want to take too
Oh,
much time of your little vacay / work day, but I want to
vacay work day.
yeah, the hustle never stops, and that's like that's just kind of, I don't know, it just shows like you deserve like all these awesome things. And I feel like even though like people like look like you're on like a channel with like 1 million subscribers and you're just rocking like you have your fan base, like whether it's like gaming, your OnlyFans, all that too. I still feel like this is still like beginning chapters for you. There's just something about your energy and like your attitude, and I feel
Thank
like
you.
everything's just gonna keep growing and growing, and it's cool to kind of catch you in this part of your life. And one thing I love about this podcast is like, originally I wanted to do like film documentaries too. That's how I learned how to edit and everything. But I realized
Yeah.
like it takes so much time to do stories that way. And I started falling in love with the
Mm.
podcast medium. And now this is like, I can make these little mini audio documentaries and it takes like 1 hour to do. And it's wicked. Like I mentioned, it's cool to catch you in this stage, this chapter. And down the road, I want to have you on for the next chapter. You know, we keep the story going. And yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
just
Yeah.
awesome.
I think it's crazy too, these little places that we fall into. Like if, you know, 10 years ago, if you had told yourself like this is what I'm going to be doing, what would you think, right? And I always think it's so funny. We go on these journeys and we go on these little paths that we never thought would exist. I never thought I would be talking about comics on YouTube professionally, and that being my job. But here I am, and the amount of comics that I read daily and the amount of things that I do daily that are just all about fandom is like so much fun. But it's this weird thing of knowing that like I was saying earlier, like this too shall pass. This is where I am now, but where will I be later, and where have I come from? It's so interesting. And but I also think personally for myself, like I'm just so grateful that I've had the opportunity to do all these things now. Like it's so weird being an artist because people always want to measure your stuff. Like what have you been in lately? You know, it's all of this, how many followers you have, all of those things. And I'm just like, I'm trying to really focus right now, being so grateful for the present, because I'm like, it doesn't matter if I have 1 million people following me or if the channel ends up getting 5 million followers or whatever. At the end of the day, I look at all of the stuff I have right now and I'm just like, holy shit. Like if I went back to me when I was 10 years old me would have stars in her eyes. And so as hungry as I am for everything to come, I think it's so great to look at where I am now and be like, thank you everyone for being here, because I don't know how I got so lucky to do all this stuff. I feel so fortunate.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and you're good at what you do, and it's going to keep growing and growing. And again, thanks for hanging out with me. It's like I mentioned, we have this small talk once in a while in passing, and sometimes it's deep, sometimes it's like sleep paralysis and shit. But it's finally cool to just like, even when we have like a 2-minute conversation, we go down there. But it's cool to like hang out with you for like an hour, this one-on-one talk. It's I always had a feeling like we'd have like a great conversation, so I'm happy you came on the show too, and everything.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for just making this podcast, because I have listened to it. Y'all that are listening to it right now or watching on YouTube, like make sure you subscribe and make sure you continue to follow this journey, because there's so many good artists that you can find and so many good pieces of art that you can connect with, whether it's music or movies or comedians. There's just so much awesome talent that you've had on the show, and so many deep conversations. Like this is the stuff I love, because it like transcends art, but also this is what art is. I don't know how to describe that. Everyone make sure you're following along, because this is a fun journey that you're going to want to join Sean for, trust me.
Thank you, Amanda. And thank you for all your support too. I appreciate that as well. Like I said, I'm a fan of you as well. And it's
Works
awesome
out.
Yeah, but again, I'm gonna let you enjoy your day, but thank you so much, and we'll have you on again, and we'll keep in touch outside of this.
Sounds good. And I'm looking forward to when we can actually all interact and hang out, so hopefully that will happen soon. All right, Sean. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I hope that you also have the best rest of your weekend.
Yeah, you too, Amanda. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
What a pleasant hang that was with Amanda. Like I mentioned in the intro, you can follow Amanda everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, @VampX13. And if you want to see her ongoing YouTube magic, subscribe to the page Top 10 Nerd. Such great quality. I'm a big fan of that channel and her work. And we thank Amanda once again for hanging out today. But before we go, we gotta thank all you legends on the Patreon. Can't forget about you guys. And actually, Amanda's one of them. So first off, big thanks to you. Also, our co-producer, Jeremy Hopkin of Hopkin Design, Ola Mazuka of Sonic Fold, Ryan Watkins of Ryan Radio, Pat Maloney, Ryan Campbell, Daniel Sun, Drew Stewart, Devin Staple, Mike Ulio, and Francis Copper, aka my mom. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that one. I've been lazy with putting these out, but we got a bunch in the backlog, and I don't know, I'm just so motivated. You're gonna be getting a lot of episodes in the next couple of weeks. Just saying. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you soon.